What if your struggle with money has very little to do with money? What if what you're actually carrying is an inheritance, a fear, a loyalty, a nervous system that learned a long time ago that safety could disappear at any moment? Somewhere in your family, someone learned there wasn't enough and they passed that on to you. Not enough money, not enough security, not enough certainty about tomorrow. And nobody ever said it out loud necessarily. Maybe it was simply a feeling that lived at the dinner table, the way someone held onto things, the tension that entered a room whenever money came up, the habit of preparing for loss before anything had even ever been lost, right? And even if your life looks different now, your body may still be living by those rules. Because inheritances aren't always material. Sometimes we inherit stories, and sometimes we inherit fears. Sometimes we inherit a nervous system organized around scarcity. On June the 19th, Chiron enters Taurus, and over the next 8 years, he's going to expose every place where scarcity became part of your identity. Not just financially, but also emotionally, physically, spiritually. Because Chiron is interested in the inheritance you never consciously chose, but have been living out anyway. Stay with me because by the end of this video, I want you to be able to tell the difference between what's actually yours, what belongs to you, and what you were simply handed. Welcome back. I'm Yolanda, and today we are going to talk about one of the most significant astrological shifts of the next decade, Chiron's ingress into Taurus. But before we get into Taurus, we need to spend a few minutes with Chiron himself. Who is Chiron? What has he been teaching us over the last 8 years in Aries? And why this shift from fire into earth, from cardinal sign to fixed sign, changes the entire assignment? Because despite what you're going to hear online, Chiron in Taurus isn't really about money and possessions and self-worth. Sure, that comes in, but it's about whether your body knows how to receive what's already there. Okay, so Chiron. Who is Chiron? Chiron was discovered in 1977 and is a small icy planetoid orbiting between Saturn and Uranus. He was the first object we identified in a class called centaurs, which are bodies that are part asteroid and part comet. They are neither one thing or the other. Already, before we even get to the mythology, you already can see what we are dealing with here. Now, in myth, Chiron is also neither one thing nor the other. Chiron is half horse, half man. And unlike most centaurs in Greek myth, who are wild and drunken and chaotic barbarians, Chiron was a teacher. He trained Jason, he trained Hercules in Greek. He trained Achilles and Asclepius, the great healer. He was the teacher of all these great heroes in Greek mythology. So story time, Hercules, also known as Hercules, was visiting his teacher, Chiron, and they decided to meet up at this little hole in the wall, this little pub out on the outskirts of the town near the forest. And they were enjoying a glass of wine each. They were having a good laugh when a whole lot of rowdy centaurs arrived. Now, remember from what I told you earlier, centaurs were not generally considered sophisticated or educated or civil. They were considered barbaric. Anyway, this rowdy bunch of centaurs showed up at this party uninvited and got very drunk, and a fight broke out between Hercules and these centaurs. Hercules shot this arrow which had been poisoned with the blood of Hydra. Highly toxic. There's no cure for this poison. So incurable. And Chiron was accidentally wounded by this arrow. And he could not heal himself, even though Chiron was known to be a great healer. There was no healing, there was no medicine for this. So because he was immortal, Chiron couldn't die. So he was in agony. And he knew he would be in agony forever. So he made a trade. Chiron went to Zeus and offered up his own immortality in exchange for the freedom of Prometheus. Now, you may know who Prometheus is. Prometheus was the Titan who'd been chained to a mountain for giving humans fire. Prometheus felt sorry for human beings and he blessed us fire, and Zeus wasn't happy with that anyway. And he had Prometheus chained to this rock high up on like a cliff top, and every day his liver was torn out by eagles, only for it to grow back every night so the punishment could start again. I mean, really a terrible punishment. So Zeus agreed, Prometheus was freed, and Chiron's soul was placed in the stars, where he became the constellation Sagittarius. Now, this is one of the only instances in Greek mythology of a divine being choosing death. And he didn't choose it for himself. He chose it for the one other figure who'd shown himself a consistent, selfless friend to mortals, right? And one more thing before we move forward, because it's going to matter later. Chiron's name comes from the Greek word che. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Cheir. And it means hand. It's where you get the word surgeon, chirurgos, which is hand worker. And he healed with his hands. So hold on to that. We are going to come back to that. Okay, so what did Chiron in Aries teach you? What did you learn while Chiron was transiting through Aries? And now Chiron entered Aries in 2018. And if you were born between 1968 to 1976, you have gone through your Aries return. You're finishing it up through your Chiron return, and you're finishing that all up. I am in the process of finishing it up. I was born in 1970, and let me tell you, the last 8 years have been very interesting. When Chiron entered Aries in 2018, it doesn't really matter where Chiron actually sits in your chart. It doesn't matter if it's sitting in your third house, your eighth house. It doesn't really matter, because your sense of self has been under construction, regardless of where you're sitting in your chart. Sure, yes, please, you can argue with me in the comments that there are layers to this, right? But there's one thing that's guaranteed with Chiron, when Chiron was traveling through Aries, is that your sense of self was under construction. If your sense of self was repressed, dismantled, or outright attacked, I won't be surprised, right? And you've probably been in healing mode this whole time, whether you called it that or not. Here's something important about identity that I think gets skipped over a lot. And it's important because the sky actually points to this fundamental truth. Okay, yeah, let's not get into the word truth. But anyway, you cannot see your own identity in isolation. The sign opposite Aries is Libra. Libra is a sign of unity, of other people, right? Of couples, partnerships, joining up. Aries is one of the I, the ego, being alone. So your identity, but it's in Aries that we begin to form our identity, create our identity. And our identity has to be reflected back to us. So your identity has to be reflected back to you by someone, right? It doesn't happen in a sealed room unless you are genuinely someone who doesn't need anyone to see you. And even then, I would argue that you are still being witnessed, you're still being seen. Now, what do I mean by this? Say you are a Buddhist monk, uh, meditating 24/7 in a cave in the Himalayas, but every few months you come down to go buy some yak milk or whatever the case may be. Those people who do interact with you, the person who sells you the milk or gives you the milk, the person who walks past you on the road will identify you as a monk. Okay, please just think about that before you leave me comments. Okay, but I welcome your thoughts on this. That doesn't mean you need people's approval, so please don't confuse what I'm saying here with approval. It means you need to be seen. That's why the sun is exalted in Aries. Okay, so with Chiron in Aries, the wound is to that most basic sense of self. Maybe you've recognized some of this in yourself. Crippling self-doubt that has absolutely nothing to do with your actual competence. But yet you doubt yourself, a nagging sense that you don't have the right to take up space or assert what you want, that you don't have the right to live, the right to be here. This people pleasing, or the opposite, a total collapse into your own problems because there's no room left for anyone else's. Militant self-sufficiency that's really just fragile insecurity, wearing armor. That's what fire is for. Fire teaches us to assert that you exist. Fire teaches us to take up space, to, burn brightly, to shine. So here's what most people won't tell you about this transit, and it's a thing that actually matters the most, okay? Aries is cardinal fire, but now Chiron is moving into Taurus, which is fixed earth, okay? So cardinal Aries initiates and starts things. Taurus is fixed earth, and fixed signs sustain. They hold things steady over time. So this isn't just a sign change, it's a change in the entire soul curriculum or job description, however you want to look at this. So Aries asked, can you claim a self? Can you claim a self? Can you be the self that you say you are? Can you be it? Taurus is about to ask you now, Chiron in Taurus is about to ask you, can that self survive contact? Can it hold up when nobody's watching, when there's no crisis to respond to, when it's just you and your own nervous system in a quiet room? And that's a completely different test. You're going to hear a lot over the next few years about Chiron in Taurus and money and self-worth and security and material resources. And yes, that's true, but it's also incomplete. Because from a somatic perspective, Taurus isn't simply wealth. Taurus is the body's experience of enoughness. We have this idea that Taurus just holds onto things, just wants to grasp and clutch onto things. But actually, Taurus is ruled by Venus and wants to experience life, wants to live life, right? So Chiron in Taurus is the body's experience of enoughness. A person can have money in the bank and still carry a nervous system organized around scarcity. You can own a beautiful home and still feel homeless on the inside. You can be surrounded by love and still arm yourself against the moment that person leaves. Chiron in Taurus often reveals a wound in the body's capacity to receive safety, to receive nourishment, to receive pleasure and rest and support and a sense of belonging, not the absence of those things in your life. The inability of your body to register them as real, even when they are right there. So if your body learned early that the world was unsafe or unpredictable, your nervous system may keep scanning for danger long after the danger is gone. And that's not a character flaw. That's biology doing exactly what you trained it to do. And maybe nobody sat you down. I know no one sat me down and explained scarcity to me. They didn't have to. I mean, for me, for example, I watched and I felt the tension in the room when money came up, when conversations around money came up. I could feel it. My mother also was fond of saying money doesn't grow on trees. I noticed who flinched, who hoarded, who gave away too much. So that's the inheritance. Your inheritance is never, I mean, culturally, our society likes to think that what you're inheriting is money and possessions. And this is, again, great Taurus lessons. They like to think, okay, here's a number we're leaving to you. Here's this precious object with, sentimental value. Here's something we're passing on to you that's physical. But no, what you also inherit is a felt sense, a sense, a feeling. Safety is a relationship between your body and the world. And if it doesn't live in the body, no amount of acquiring more will ever feel like enough. And for my astrologer friends watching this, if you're thinking, oh, how am I coming to these conclusions? Well, the moon is exalted in Taurus. The moon is your body. And Venus rules Taurus. And Venus is in relationship to the world. Okay, so Taurus is very much tied to place. And here's something worth sitting with. We don't heal in isolation. We heal in relationship with our environment. Your nervous system is constantly reading the land for signals. Is there beauty here? Is there stability here? Is there clean water? Fresh air? Is there a sense of community? Is there a rhythm that you can settle into? Research keeps pointing to something that we tend to ignore, that anxiety rises when people lose contact with the seasons, with the natural cycles, with the bird song, with with natural beauty, anything that is not a screen. So Chiron in Taurus may expose wounds that were never really about you. They were about living somewhere fundamentally misaligned with what your body actually needs from you. So the healing question becomes simple. Does the place where you live support the life you're trying to grow? Not every environment lets every nervous system settle. And that's not your failure, by the way. That's just information. So the last time Chiron was in Taurus was from 1976 to 1983. So if that's you or your parent or someone you love, you are about to enter your Chiron return. The exact degree Chiron occupied when they were born is when you experience, the exact degree that Chiron occupied when you were born is when you experience your Chiron return. And it's not a small thing, it's a big deal. That's one of the most significant astrological milestones a person goes through. Now, Chiron healed with his hands. He was a renowned healer. And Taurus is the sign of the hand worker, the body that builds, that touches soil, that makes something real out of raw materials instead of just thinking about it. Where Aries thinks about doing something, Taurus gets down and does it, right? You didn't choose the inheritance, nobody does, but what you build with it now, what you do with your inheritance, that's yours. That's the actual handwork that this transit is asking of you. Not to think your way into feeling like enough, but to build your way there with with your hands, with your skills and with your body. because your body actually holds you, right? Okay, so I think time to end this video. I yapped on too long. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about this work is because I've lived it. The things I teach here aren't theories to me. They're things I've had to navigate in my own life, and these are also experiences, initiations, shifts that I've watched my clients go through and experience. So if you'd like to follow along with that journey, my personal journey, I do share quite a bit of that. I write about it regularly on Substack, sharing, my experiences with planetary transits, inherited patterns, my midlife transformation, and what it means to build a life that feels more aligned with who you really are. Then I would love to have you there as well on Substack. And do remember to like and subscribe to this channel. It really means a lot to me that you are here. I do appreciate you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.